This is Fantology.
You may have heard of us.
All right, what's up, wannabe podcasters? This is Stephen, your host with Fantology Podcast, along with my lifelong friends, Ben and Josh, talking about a new audiobook about wannabe podcasters, as you might have guessed from the intro. We're talking about Dark One, Forgotten by Brandon Sanderson and Dan Wells. Came out, a week and a half ago, 2 weeks, depending on when this releases. And this was an interesting project that I think maybe a lot of people have not listened to yet and are kind of curious about and on the fence about. So the goal here is to do a totally non-spoiler review. I mean, it's going to be spoilers in the sense that we're going to tell you what we thought of it, but no plot details. So tune in if you want to know if you'd be interested in this new book.
I think, and also we'll give maybe a back of the book blurb about it. We'll give kind of the framing for because so if you're super spoiler sensitive, then maybe not, but we won't reveal any plot details or anything.
Okay, so I mean, without further ado,
I want to do really fast. So I'm just going to apologize to our listeners. I went back and listened to a podcast that me and Josh did together about a different Dan Wells book, and I had recorded the podcast and I could still not tell who was saying what. So, we're twins and
really, I edit the podcast and I can tell who's saying what, man.
I literally I'm
tell
the
your
one
voices
that was
apart.
speaking these words and I still couldn't tell. I mean, I was listening to it on 2x speed. So that might be,
that does make it
speeding it up makes everything sound similar, but I don't know. It was a weird experience though, because I'm I remember this being said. I don't remember if I'm the one that said it. So
So you want to preface every comment with who's saying what?
Exactly.
Ben,
for the record,
by the way, this is Ben.
I think you should just take Ben's audio track and just knock it up a few not a few octaves, but a key or whatever. I don't know how the best way to say that, but just make Ben sound a little bit more feminine.
Yeah, we'll make Ben a castrati.
Well, right now it's probably easy because my dog's barking downstairs, so you might be hearing that. So
All right, so that out of the way, good luck to listeners to determine the difference between Ben and Josh. I'll try to talk in between each of you, maybe to break up the same voices. Okay, so maybe one of you guys want to give us a back of the book blurb or tell us about this project? What is this thing?
So first of all, I don't know if they're calling it an audiobook. I would more frame it as an audio drama. And the whole format is something that's kind of unique, that's not really being released right now. And I haven't really listened to radio dramas from the 1930s or 40s or whatever, when the radio dramas were big. But this sounds more like a modern day radio drama than it does a typical audiobook.
You don't remember those, Josh?
I think that would be a really fun, that would be a fun second podcast to start, is reviewing old radio dramas. I think that would actually be really fun. But this is, if you go into thinking I'm going to listen to an audiobook, then that's not really the experience you're going to get. It's picture an audio drama that's done in podcast form, but is all stitched together. I don't know what. Yeah.
So multiple voice actors and actresses. It's mostly two women that are kind of the two main characters, but there's a lot of different ones. And it tracks this unfolding mystery through the lens of this woman starting a podcast to dig into a old murder of someone that she holds in esteem. We'll say, trying to just kind of be vague.
It is sorry, just to kind of pause. It's a massive homage or homage or whatever to Serial.
Homage, yeah.
And which I think a lot of people will really resonate with, because I know for me, Serial was a thing that got me into podcasts back in the day. It was kind of one of the first podcasts to really break into become a part of the cultural zeitgeist, right? And so they really did kind of capture that the feel of Serial.
I'm just laughing that you use homage and zeitgeist in one comment.
I'm trying to elevate my syntax. Really, I can stand apart from Josh. He'll be down in the gutter. I'll be using my vocab words.
Uh,
Anyway,
your lexicon.
my lecture. Yeah. There you go. But yeah, I think that it is kind of a cool tribute to that. So
did they say that? Did they Sanderson Wells like
Uh,
listed Serial as an inspiration?
in one of his streams, he said, like, if you enjoy podcasts like Serial, then you'll probably
okay.
enjoy this. So
Yeah. So I got to be honest, I don't listen to a lot of podcasts, which is weird because I've probably recorded more podcasts than I've actually listened to. Like, I'm not even joking. I just never became a part of my day or whatever. And I never listened to Serial or any similar.
You got a
podcast,
treat coming for you, man.
Dude, you should listen to Serial. You would
really
be
should.
you would get
I did
into it.
listen to that Homecoming podcast that got big, and then there was like an Apple, I think an Apple TV Plus
Amazon.
or was it Amazon? Yeah. So that's one that I've listened to, which kind of is a little familiar.
That's
anyway, so this was
that's familiar to this.
okay. So this was
That's pretty
kind of a
similar, yeah.
new listening experience for me. Like, I don't listen to a ton of these things.
Okay. So coming from a little bit different perspective, I've listened to not a lot, but like several fictional podcasts. Everything from like slice of life fantasy podcasts to stuff like Homecoming, just other kind of serialized fictional podcasts. I listened to one that was a lot like this. That was like a young teenager that was trying to solve a murder. It was just a lot like it with different voice actors. So I've kind of had experienced different things like this, but they were all podcasts. So and the kind of like and again, from my perspective, the kind of book that I've been kind of working on, I'm thinking about really like doing, if I ever like release it, like doing a like podcast version of it where I would release like podcast episodes of it.
Okay.
So playing with the medium like this is really, really intriguing to me. So for that reason, I think that this was really kind of, if you take it in the meta conversation, I really appreciate that Sanderson is taking a charge on playing with the medium like this.
Yeah. So Josh, that's right. Because when you said, oh, there's nothing really being produced like this, my first thought was like, oh, I've listened to a few podcasts that are like this. And I literally had to, like, it took me a moment to be like, but it wasn't a podcast. It was an audio book.
It was an audio.
So,
well, it was an audio drama though. Like
audio drama. Yeah, whatever. I listened to it on Audible. It's an audio book. So, yeah, so it's interesting that I can't really think of another audiobook that was pretending to be a podcast, that was pretending to be a like serial like murder mystery, a true crime podcast. So it's cool.
All right, so we can't really put our finger on what this thing is that we're reviewing, but for whatever the experience was, did it work for you? What was your review?
I'll let you go first, Josh, and we'll probably, yeah, I can't wait for Steven, because I can already see that smirk that like, oh, I'm getting ready to roast something.
Okay, so in a lot of ways, this was pretty mid for me. Like, I'd say probably, like, if I had to give it a number just in terms of like the plot and characters and kind of typical stuff that we talked about with our reviews, probably be like somewhere like a 5 out of 10, like pretty mid. But having said that, I was like really I just enjoyed it. Like I enjoyed the experience of listening to it. So like I think my enjoyment was way higher than like what I think the like actual how well they did everything is, or how well they did everything, if that makes any sense. Like I just really, really enjoyed listening to it. I enjoyed the performance of the narrators. The plot was intriguing enough, the characters were interesting enough that like I just really enjoyed listening to it. If I sit down and break it down, like, you know, it wasn't like a all-time great Sanderson, or even for that matter Dan Wells book, like, but it was interesting.
So it's guilty pleasure level is what you're saying.
Guilty pleasure level, but also breaking ground in like a new way to present these type of stories, which is really interesting to me. So like it fulfilled the guilty pleasure level but also made me like really excited for the future of media going forward.
Yeah, I could see that. It's kind of hard to rate because we have such a small sample size, right? So of what this is supposed to be. One thing I have two comments that are kind of non-spoilers, but that I don't know, might have subtracted from my enjoyment. First, it felt like a Dan Wells book for the first half and a Sanderson book for the second half to me.
I could see that.
Yeah, it's like the moment that the like supernatural component starts to play an active role, it like switches to like Sanderson. So that is I guess one critique. And the second critique, this might be a critique that you had, Stephen, is when like two Mormon people are given access to a bleep button, then they will overuse it. It's probably Sanderson's fourth law now, because like
that is
anyway,
true.
that's
pretty funny.
My critique. So and I know that Stephen might
Yeah.
not appreciate that humor because he doesn't like, you don't love the, I don't know, the humor that Sanderson has displayed in his more recent books. So this one might fall
Yeah.
flat for you too.
The YA style humor that Sanderson leans into is not my favorite. And we see that in a big way through just a ton of bleeping out swear words that I guess is funny, but at the same time, it's just like way too much.
Yeah, it would be funny if it happened like 3 times or something, you know? But like if I feel like if you want swearing in the book, just put swearing in the book. And if you want like, okay, I don't want to get into spoilers, but there are times when the bleep button would make sense. And then other times, like, okay, this is kind of a very mild spoiler, but like, I'm pretty sure there is a time when she was supposed to be live streaming the podcast in which like a bleep button was used, which I know can be done if you're like in the podcast studio. Like I watched the one show that Linus from Linus Tech Tip does sometimes, and they have like a bleep button that they'll like press that's sitting around the table. So like that's technically a live stream with the bleep button. I know it's possible, but like this was not that. They were like
in the field
somewhere out and about, doing an interview, like not, and like it was bleeped. Like if you're gonna commit to the bit, then like commit to the bit, and so. Sometimes the bleeps were funny and worked, but other times it was like
maybe she felt bad about having the E on her podcast episodes. So after it was published, she went back, edited the audio, re-uploaded it, and we're listening to the version afterwards.
Yeah,
okay,
maybe so.
Fair.
Yeah.
Anyway. But yeah, okay. That was probably my biggest pet peeve of the whole thing then.
I mean, it did kind of make sense. Yeah. Like I will say that like there was one character that swore a lot more than all the rest, and that would be true to life, right? Like some people just have like a little bit more potty mouths. So I didn't mind I don't know. I didn't even mind it that much. It was just funny to me. So
yeah, I mean, I don't really think it was offensive swearing, and it was all bleeped anyway, but I just didn't. It was just so much, like it was just overused. It didn't seem natural. Like, yeah.
Okay. So that's a pretty nitpicky thing though. I mean, chances are that's not going to move. It might move it from like a 7 to 7.5 or something if they were to remove that. But okay. So yeah, for me overall, it's hard to know how to rate this because it's like a one of a kind right now. But in terms of enjoyment, I would rate it. Like if I'm comparing it to Tress, which is another Sanderson book that I just read, I enjoyed it less than Tress, but I enjoyed it more than like the I'm Not a Serial Killer books that I've been reading. So it's probably between like 6 and an 8 for me.
All right, I'll give my review.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't want to trash it, but I didn't really like it very much. I think part of it was the format wasn't for me. Like I didn't get the connection back to the serial killer podcasts that a lot of people really enjoy. So maybe
not serial killer. I don't think that the podcast is based. It's not.
No, they're just true crime. It's a true crime podcast.
Okay,
yeah,
true crime. True crime is what I meant. Yeah. There's not a.
It's called serial.
So you have
but
your homework right now is to go listen to Sarah Koenig's podcast. Just anything by Sarah Koenig, and that will give you.
No, Serial season 1. The other serial seasons. are good for different reasons. But Serial season 1 is that's a trip, man. Yeah.
Hey, I love Only Murders in the Building. I feel like I've done my homework.
Well, Only Murders is basically Serial, like that. They're referencing Serial. Like
Yeah.
Tina Fey's character in Only Murders in the Building is supposed to be Sarah Koenig, like the Serial lady. Not like it's not like supposed to be her.
This will
but
make
like,
you
it's kind of
appreciate
supposed to
Only
be her.
Murders in the Building on another level as well. So you need to
Yeah.
do this.
Okay.
And there's been developments in the case very recently. So
Yeah.
you should also
Oh yeah.
listen to it for that reason.
So I will maybe do that. I don't know if I'm going to commit. But yeah, so I didn't have that same love of the of the genre that you guys had. So there was none of that for me. And then I wasn't ever really attached to it. Honestly, I probably wouldn't have finished if I didn't know that we were going to be reviewing it. Once it got to like 2/3 of the way through, it picked up a little bit, became a little interesting. That's when the Sanderson half of the book apparently kicked off. So that was a little interesting. Like I did kind of want to know, like, okay, what's going to happen. But by the time it was over, I just didn't know like what was the point of this whole book. Like,
Yeah. Well, that's something
Yeah.
interesting to me because I have read nothing else in the Dark One universe. And so I didn't know if I was missing something.
well, that's why I'm so confused. And I mean, I'm not going to go into that too much because there'd be spoilers, but there were just real subtle references to, and maybe some like threads that they could pick up in the future that would connect over. But there was no, based off of the Dark One story that we've read from the graphic novels, there was no need for this at all. Honestly, it just seemed like this whole audiobook was just out there as like a way for Sanderson and Wells to work together for the first time in a really low risk format. Like not that many people are probably going to care about a 6-hour audio book / drama / whatever this is. So it's just not really ever going to be like moving the needle in terms of much of anything for either author. So it just felt like a way for them to put something out there and
Yeah, kind of get some feedback.
I kind of want to push. I kind of want to push back on that a little bit because I think as an author, as like Sanderson as an author, I think you're right. Like I think that this will not be like a big part of his, like pantheon of books. I don't think it's ever going to be talked about as one of his best books. Maybe it'll be talked about as one of his worst. I don't know, but I think that Sanderson, as somebody that's trying to be a big player in the publishing industry and make changes in the publishing industry and push like the publishing industry into adopting new and relevant and like interesting things. I think that this is a really big piece of that puzzle, like showing that there can be room for more than just a novel that's being read like and recorded as an audiobook, that there's room for more than that. I think that this is what is like a proof of concept for that. And so, yeah, I guess that's my whole thing is that, as a book by Sanderson, I think you're right. But as how this fits in the publishing industry moving forward, I think it's a lot more than that.
I mean, if that's the case, it almost needs like a different category or a different price point, really, because for 6 hours, it's kind of a lot to ask for a full Audible credit.
I definitely agree with that. And like, I kind of wish that he did the same thing with this as he was doing with the Kickstarter books, like not making it free, obviously, but like finding ways to distribute it that's going to be a lot less money than an Audible credit. Like, and it's tough because this feels like something that you would get in like the free section of Audible, like where if you subscribe, you can go listen to like one of the like 1,000, kind of just really, really mediocre books that they have on selection there. not that all of them are bad, but like I remember I was like, it was October like a year ago, or not even last year, like 2 years ago. And like I was like, oh, I kind of want to read like a little like slasher book. And I went to like the free Audible section and found one. And it was just like a really kind of boring, like 3 hour story about like a serial killer. Like this feels a lot more like that than it does like a Wheel of Time book or something like that. You know what I mean?
Right.
So
Well, it obviously just was not something that had nearly as much time spent on it as a full-length published novel would.
So
Yeah.
I think I agree with that, but the voice acting was really good. The
Mhm.
production quality of it was really good.
Yeah,
I think
that's fair. It was
So-
pretty good.
it is kind of like this weird, like I don't think the plot or the humor really landed for any of us, but that doesn't say that there isn't an audience that would really like it.
So,
And
so this,
it had, yeah, like the quality of it was good.
I feel like the quality of it is around like what other audio, like fictional audio podcasts I've listened to are like maybe even, yeah, about that. Like, so I don't know if like this would be better suited for something with like advertisers financing it, or if it could be like just something that you can go on and buy on Spotify or buy on like, Apple Books or Google Play Books for like $3.99 or something. And that's how you would finance it. Like it's just it's kind of weird. And I think they need to figure that out because
So if
it's
they
not a
had
traditional
released it,
thing.
if they had released it as a podcast, would that have upped your enjoyment of it?
I think so. But I was thinking about that a lot as I was reading it or as I was listening to it. But there's art at the same time. I kind of like that it's like all one thing and you can kind of do it. Like I enjoy binging it. So like I don't know
I
if it
enjoyed
would have been
binging it
like
too.
a podcast, like, and you just drop all the episodes at once.
Mm-hmm.
No, see, I think that the way that the story could have worked is having the anticipation week to week. I mean, I know a lot of people probably would have dropped off, but I don't know. It could have been fun to speculate.
But then it's just a podcast. Like, I don't know. I just feel like
Then it's a podcast. Yeah, but it was written as a podcast. So
yeah.
I don't know.
Mm.
Yeah, and dear listeners, you can tell that we're obviously struggling to like really identify what this thing is and how it fits into like, first of all, Sanderson's other works, because we all know him as like a prolific author that puts out like consistently very high quality content. And so, this is just something that we're trying to figure out. I wanted to ask you guys do you think that this bodes well for Sanderson and Wells collab, or does this make you more nervous about it? Or is it just like, doesn't really tell you anything because it's the first thing and you just want to like give him another chance?
Well, let me ask you guys, because I haven't read any of Dan Wells' books. How does this compare to his books? Like, could you pick out points? It sounds like you could pick out points. It was like, this is Dan Wells, this is Brandon Sanderson.
And I think that that's mostly because I've been binging the John Cleaver serial killer series. Like I've listened to that pretty much exclusively for the past few months. And so a lot of it like literally like could have been lifted from those books, like whenever they're like, he's describing like whenever there's a cop that's like profiling the killing that happens in this book.
Yeah.
Like that sounds like it's coming directly from a Dan Wells book, like word for word. So that's kind of, and then you have the kind of intricate, how does this magical power interact with the world in interesting ways? And that's directly, like that's obviously Sanderson's specialty. So, and
there was like a little conversation about why do people need tears, because they don't actually do anything.
what's
emotional tears?
And that sounds like an intentionally blank episode.
And again, I should listen to more podcasts. Honestly, I've listened to maybe like one intentionally blank. To me, it just sounded like something that Sanderson would throw in because it was like his fun science-y thing.
Yeah. I mean, I could see that just being a piece of trivia that either one of them knew and decided to throw it in there. But
to answer your question, I totally agree with Ben. It sounded like exactly what he said. And I am not a serial killer book with a Sanderson twist on it. I think that was this created before. I think this was created like before Dan Wells came on, like had Dragonsteel. Like I don't think that this is part of his like new
Yeah,
Dragonsteel
it
role.
must have been, because he was announced like two
But I think
months
his
ago,
name is on it.
3 months ago.
No, this is a Dan Wells book. This is a Dan Wells and Sanderson collab. Like they are co-authors on it, but I don't think that this is what he was working on when he was announced that he was like VP of
I see.
creative.
So you're
development
saying
at
maybe it was just more of
Dragonsteel.
a side project for both of them, and if it was like more of
Yeah.
a main project that they're like devoting like company resources to, then it could be better.
Company resources. Yeah, no, I mean, you're right. I shouldn't scoff it. It's a legit company for sure. It seems like they're just kind of friends doing a project together.
Yeah, but
It's like if we were to call Fantology time company time.
yeah, well, if we had 70
We have
employees
50
or whatever,
yeah.
then I think,
Yeah, totally. I would hope that in the future there's maybe a little more separation, so we can't pick out this is the Dan Wells part, this is the Brandon Sanderson part. Instead, it's like, okay, Dan Wells is writing this book. Maybe him and Sanderson worked on the big plot together because it's in the Cosmere. But Dan wrote all the characters, all the dialogue, everything. Like it's his book, basically. The meshing of authors together, yeah, it seemed kind of clunky. I mean, it just seemed like kind of a fun project that they did, and probably didn't spend a ton of time on.
Yeah, I agree with that. Yeah.
So, but that doesn't mean, I mean, again, if you're looking for like a kind of a pulpy 6-hour audiobook that you can listen to on like a road trip or something, and has like a very low barrier to entry, like say, you're a fan of fantasy or whatever, or you're a fan of authors and you're trying to get your significant other to listen to this, or even like a teenager to listen to it or something. I think that it's pretty fun.
This isn't what I would give somebody if I wanted to get them into Sanderson, though.
No, I'm not saying that. I'm just saying if you're listening to our podcast and you see a non-spoiler review, this is the situation I'd recommend it for, is like if you have like a road trip that you're going to go on and you want to just be able to binge something on that road trip.
Yeah, sure.
That this would be a pretty fun thing to do. And
if you've already made your way through all of Fantology's back catalog and you're like,
of course,
dang, I need something else to listen to.
Yeah. So that's my recommendation for where this would like slot nicely in. And if you're expecting that, then I think you would enjoy it.
But again, is it worth an Audible credit though? Like that's the tough thing.
Right now, I have audiobook credits to burn right now. So
yeah, I know we need to figure out what to do with that. But like for most people, I'm like, I don't know if like they're trying to decide between this and like getting one of other Sanderson's works on Audible. I'm like, I don't know if I really say, yeah, I use this on Audible. Is there another way to listen to it, or is it just on Audible?
You can get it through libraries.
You can get through libraries too. Yeah, but I don't know if it's on like Spotify or anything.
Let me just see. Like
I don't know. It's very hard to judge like what's worth an Audible credit, but to me, 6 hours of like entertainment is worth $10 or $15.
Yeah, I guess, but it's just compared to what else. You're right.
Well, yeah, sure, but that's like saying, I mean, you can go rent a bunch of movies for $3, but not all movies are the same quality, So
yeah.
I just have a
Forgotten
hard
is
time,
available.
Oh, yeah, go ahead, Josh.
So it's available on Libro FM, by the way, for $15, which is the same price as an Audible credit, and on Google Play Books, for also $15. So
it's the usual.
Yeah.
Which it is kind of pricey. I'll give you that.
I've always struggled with the Audible credits because you can get a 40-hour book for the same price as a 6-hour book, which just
this is what makes
Audible.
This is what makes Audible a really kind of what Sanderson's kind of trying to rail against when it comes to Audible. Like,
yeah,
right.
Not a really good way of doing it.
I guess really fast to kind of address that, because I feel like we should, and this is just basically parroting what he said on his release, is this book is coming out on Audible for one because he had like a deal before he like took his stand, but also he kind of made it clear, I think it was in a podcast that he did, or like an announcement video, that he's like, again, not trying to boycott Audible or not trying to get other people to boycott Audible, but just to make like a point with the secret project books. So
Yeah, we talked about it on our what episode did we do on that, Stephen? We've talked about we've covered
the
this
state of
a bit.
Sanderson.
It was the
Yeah.
state of the
Sanderson
Sanderson
video.
discussion.
But
Yeah.
I don't think that this book had come out when you guys talked about that. So it really it's like
Right.
kind of
No.
the first thing that he's done since he kind of made that stand. And then like it was
Yeah.
immediately like releasing a book on Audible. So it's something he addressed. So I figured we'd throw it on here too.
Yeah. So there you go. For what it's worth, there's our non-spoiler review of the book. Check it out. Let us know if you just horribly disagree. Like, I didn't love it, but that doesn't mean that you won't. I don't know.
Yeah, if you're a fan of bleeped out swears and like a fast-paced 6-hour plot, and you're a fan of serial podcasts, then great. And tell us on Discord. I don't think we like asked for opinions on this on Discord, and like nobody had read it. So we're
Well, I
looking
mean,
for
I think
people
a
to talk
lot
to
of that is
about it.
people are just hesitant to spend the Audible credit for 6 hours for a book that they don't really know anything about.
I would say this is one if it's on libraries, unless you have Audible credits to burn. Even if it's like
Just
a few weeks,
Put a hold
just like
and just wait.
just put a hold on it, and whenever it comes up, treat it like, oh sweet, I get to listen to this now. That's how I would recommend consuming this if you're interested in it. I think it's worth the time. I don't think it's worth the Audible credit.
Fair.
That's fair. All right. Thanks, guys. Talk to you later.
That's it.
All right.